It is time for another edition of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. As always, I'm joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. We're here to break down UFC Vegas 88. Of course, goes down on Saturday inside the UFC Apex. But of course, all you got to do is look at this fight card, and you knew exactly where it's at. You knew it was not in front of fans. You knew it's an Apex card.
Sold out arena, Jason. What are you talking about?
It's kind of crazy to think of Tuivasa, maybe one of the more popular UFC fighters out there because of his personality, the fact of it should be, I mean, this is promotional malpractice to sit here and have him fighting inside the Apex here. But, you know, the way I was saying about this earlier this morning, Pete, and I'm sure you probably agree with me here is, yes, while on paper, you look at the fight card and you're not, you know, all geared up to sit in front of your television set on Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening to watch these fights, but it truly is another opportunity for us to find some ways to make some money on fights.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what it is, though, Jason. Like, I'm fine with these bad cards sprinkled between amazing cards. The issue is when we have a ton of bad cards in a row. You know what I mean? Like, the level of competition and the level of skill throughout the UFC, you know, there needs to be some, like, stacked cards out there. It can't just be, like, 2 good fights or 3 good fights and the rest is just like, you know, just filling out the roster. I mean, 299 was incredible. 300 is going to be phenomenal. But outside of that, like, I think pay-per-views, for the most part, pay-per-views need to be, you know, what you pay for. They got to be amazing. If like Apex cards are going to be like mediocre, that's okay. But like, there has to be some consistency. And I don't think there should ever be a pay-per-view where we're sitting here questioning, like, do we even buy it? I mean, obviously, I'm going to buy every single one and support the company because it's the sport I love and it's the sport I'm a part of. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with this when it's like every other or every couple. But there was a long stretch, and throughout the COVID era, my gosh, they were just putting anything together they could, which was amazing. But we're well past that now, so I think that the level of cards need to continue to improve.
Of course, last week at UFC 299, we finally saw the streak get snapped where the favorite finally won in the UFC main event. Of course, just an absolute masterclass there by Sean O'Malley. And by the way, congratulations to Dogs S74 for taking down the Fight HQ contest, scoring 542 points. His lineup was Dustin Poirier, Jack Della Maddalena, Jolton Almeida, who, boy, it was looking really good for him in that first round until he gets knocked out there at the second. Macy, Barber, Matthias Ganrop, and Philippe Leans. You know, I mean, obviously Dustin Poirier, it doesn't go well for him in the first round. Ultimately gets the knockout there in the second round. Jack Della Maddalena is probably 2 minutes away from losing that matchup. And I was talking about this on my podcast yesterday. I was like, when you look at where he's at now in the rankings and everyone above him, I go, who would say he has a chance to beat? Because everyone in front of him are grapplers. And I think we've seen that deficiency with him. And Joe Rogan on the broadcast was spot on when, you know, Burns got him down third round. He's like, if he doesn't get up, he is going to lose this decision here. So if Jack Della Maddalena, I think if I'm him, I think he's got to find whether he brings people in or he goes somewhere. He's got to get around a bunch of grapplers.
Yeah, I mean, he's around grapplers with Craig Jones and everything and good, solid jiu-jitsu guys. But that's the issue with jiu-jitsu guys. You know what I mean? Like, I've trained with Hensel Gracie, Rhode Island forever, and they're phenomenal, and they've helped me so much. But there's a reason why you also have to incorporate wrestling training too. Like, you know, take down the fence. You have to learn get-ups from wrestling. You have to learn counters. You have to learn offensive takedowns as well. So, like, improve his wrestling, get rooted with some very, very talented wrestlers to help round out your game, because it's not a jiu-jitsu issue, in my opinion. I mean, like, there have been previous, you know, fights where he's been stuck in arm triangles and he's gotten out of it. And granted, he didn't get put in bad grappling submission spots with Gilbert Burns, one of the best Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioners out there. But like, the Achilles heel is his wrestling. Work on your wrestling, my man, because like calling out Shavkat, I love Jack Della Maddalena a lot. Shavkat's very well-rounded. Your hope is that you're just going to knock everybody out, and coming from behind with that Hail Mary knee against Gilbert Burns, you're not always going to find that shot. I mean, yeah, you get lucky sometimes, and that was one of the most lucky strikes, and I was dancing around the living room when he landed that because I needed it.
Yeah, I will tell you this. I did not love Philippe Leans in the third round. Essentially, it wasn't engaging. I mean, he was clearly, you know, it's one of those things just as a consumer of the sport. I understand why he was doing it, because he knew unless he got caught with something, he wasn't going to lose a fight, but really didn't love seeing him kind of just basically run around there in that third round. Gamrot, man, looked good. Scored a massive number over there. If you had told me Macy Barber was going to be optimal, I would have probably said, I think you're wrong, but man, she was.
Was Barber optimal?
Well, at least in our contest, she was.
Oh, in our contest.
She got, I want to say 99 points.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think for the optimal lineup, it actually had Gilbert Burns a part of it too, like for the actual optimal lineup, which was odd because like the construction of it, I put a tweet out there last week, and it was 3 9,000 options. The 8,200, 8,000 fade between Jalton Almeida getting almost 10 takedowns in round one, and then going a single leg and getting hammer fisted to death against Curtis Blaze, which basically made neither one of them necessary for lineups. And then in addition to that, like having those 3 really high scores, O'Malley's volume was bananas. Joanne Wood was needed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like Gamrot, like I don't know why I capped his ceiling. I really don't. Because we know that Rafael Dos Anjos can get back to his feet, which I should have known would boost his totals. You know what I'm saying? But it was a hell of a week. And congrats to one of our listeners, too, who hit me up on social. Give me that 1993, Alex. He ended up taking down the big GPP and wanted to thank our show, winning $48,000. Congrats to him.
That is awesome. That's awesome. Of course, leave comments in the comment section. We want to hear, who are your favorite underdogs this week? Who is that, under 8,000 option that is going to be a core play for you over there on DraftKings? I will mention that usually we do give away Prize Picks props here. Well, Pete, I couldn't log into Prize Picks. So last week, because it's no longer here in Florida, last week I was able to VPN from, saying I was in another state. And so I was able to see what the props were. Today, I probably logged in like 4 different locations on VPN. Could not get in the Prize Picks. So if you do have a Prize Picks that you want, you can hit us up in the comments section. Tell me what it is. I'll let you know where I kind of think on that. But yeah, right now here in my home state of Florida, Prize Picks is not legal.
I can't access Prize Picks either, so there's no help from me either. I'd have to go to the neighboring state in order to do so. And Jason, don't be getting banned or something with trying these VPNs.
Hey, look, I'm just doing it for our listeners. I know we've got listeners who want to know this Prize Picks. So of course, we do have our DraftKings contest. The link is below, so you can check that out. Also, we got our Discord channel. Great conversations going on in there. As always, we appreciate everyone who tunes in each and every week.
Did you see that for the past 2 weeks, I'm such an idiot and I've forgotten to join our contest? Dude, I'm dropping in those standings and it's quite pathetic. So now I'm 2 contests behind. So I just need to just completely wash you guys out and do a lot of catching up.
Yeah, I put the updated standings up earlier on today. Spencer still has that overall lead. He has been very consistent throughout. He's only had really one really bad week, and that's what it's got to be there.
His lineups, my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, he literally, it's his lowest score was 287 points, but everything else has been 350 and above. I'm still there in second place, even though I've kind of had a couple of not so good weeks the past couple weeks, and so,
Jason,
but yeah,
Mr. Consistent.
Hey, that's what I try. I try to do that.
I'm consistently bad in our contest, so I guess I am consistent.
Look, the thing I say about it is you have to kind of treat it the way I view the contest. I think you have to treat it like it's a cash contest in terms of getting up those leaderboards. But yeah, I mean, if you play like GPPs and you're going to take some shots, I mean, and look, and that's what you have to do in these GPP contests. And kind of as we start to look ahead to game theory for UFC Vegas 88. First off, I think the thought is the main event to me has to be a priority this week just because of where the price points are at with both of those guys. We'll get into actually breaking down the fight here momentarily, but you see the path for both guys. And, I think that, I think there's questions on both sides. I think the one major question I'll have on Tuivasa is what happens if Marcin Tybura can lengthen this fight out? What happens if he gets it to, say, the third round or longer? I think that the question mark for Tybura is we've seen him get knocked out quickly. So, and we know about the power he has there. And then, some of these 9,000 options, I'll tell you, like, I understand why you would want to get to a Nzechukwu, and that may be more betting against Ovince St. Preux, where Ovince is in this situation. Don't really love a 9,000 Macy Chiasson. First off, I want to see what she looks like on the scale. That's always been kind of the issue with her. But I will say this: I think Mike Davis as a 9,200 option is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So I would agree with you. I would say that some of these 9,000 options are interesting and some aren't, in my opinion. We got a lot of 9,000 options that I think have round 2, round 3 high probabilities, not necessarily round 1. And we want round 1 type of finishers out of these 9,000 options, right? You also have that main event that probably is optimal because of the salaries. The only concern would be like the Jailton Almeida Curtis Blades effect, where like Jailton Almeida goes out there and looks so damn good early. Almost has what, 9-10 takedowns in round 1. And then in the second round, something silly, goes for a takedown, sits there, leaves his head out, and gets hammer fisted 10 consecutive times by Curtis Blades, and then ends up losing. And then Curtis Blades not even becoming optimal at 8,200. So it's like, okay, could that happen, right? Like Tybura could go out there and do literally the same thing and almost replicate that performance, get an early takedown against the guy who has basically no grappling or wrestling at all in Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa has that kill shot within his arsenal, can go out there and as long as he survives, he's live for a knockout as long as he's standing. So maybe in a weird situation like that, the Curtis Blades score wasn't needed, which perhaps that fight isn't needed this one, but I think that's more of a reason of a high scoring slate. Whereas last week we had a significantly high scoring slate with Gamrot, Sean O'Malley. Who's the other 9,000 option? I'm forgetting that. The heavyweight Despain went out there and made Josh Parisian look like an amateur. I think that's more about the slate than anything, because usually 8,200, 8,000, 8,300, 7,900, one of those are going to be in the optimal lineup. It's very difficult to fail. I'll tell you what, though, when I'm looking at these 9,000 options, there's one name that really, really sticks out, and I circled and I loved him. I love Mike Davis. Love Mike Davis a lot, and I didn't know that he trains with my striking coach when I was out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Crew Dom. But it's not him. It's Thiago Moises. I love Thiago Moises this week. I really, really do. I didn't even realize that he is training at Fight Nerds for quite some time now. So, like as a previous American Top Team guy, he goes to American Top Team when he's in the States, and when he's not, he's at Fight Nerds. My gosh, the Fight Nerds is a team that I really like. So, can't wait to break it down.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, another fighter I will tell you is probably going to be a core play for me. Isaac Dulgarian.
I like him too. I can't wait. And I was listening to a lot of interviews. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on that fight either.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact of Christian Rodriguez up at 45, have question marks of whether, I think he's a guy that, whatever lifestyle changes need to be made, I think he's more fit for 35 than he is 45. And Dulgarian is a solid prospect. So he's a guy, when we talk about that kind of that mid-range in the 8,000, he's a guy that sticks out to me this week. Of course, if you do have any questions on the fights, or maybe have a comment about something myself or Pete have said, leave those in the comments, and we would love to interact with you, whether you're watching us here live on YouTube or if you're watching us after the fact. Maybe it's a Friday afternoon, Saturday morning when you're checking out the show. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that. Of course, we're here every week for a UFC event. Of course, the UFC is running shows. I believe our next week we do not have a UFC is the week of April the 20th. So it is a jam-packed UFC schedule. So Pete, let's get right into it. Of course, we got the main event, as we've already kind of briefly talked a little bit about here. Tuivasa taking on Marcin Tybura. Tuivasa is a minus 115 betting favorite, minus 105 here for Tybura. As we mentioned on DraftKings, 8,300 for Tuivasa. 7,900 here for Tybura. And as we do this show, I've not seen these salaries for FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, I think this fight's necessary. We talked about that. I don't really have a strong stance one way or another as to who I really think is going to win the fight. I do think that it's pretty obvious to point out what's going to happen for Tuivasa if he wins, or Tybura if he wins. Tuivasa touching the vulnerable chin of Marcin Tybura, which has been cracked significantly and quite often throughout his career. When Tybura loses, it's because of his striking defense. He gets hit, he's been dropped, he's been wobbled and knocked out in many of his losses. So I think that Ty's power is significant for the division. We've seen him knock out Derek Lewis. We've seen him go out there and just put together great performances. As far as who's the more well-rounded mixed martial artist, it's clearly Marcin Tybura. Tybura has solid striking. I would say just solid. Striking offense. He can throw high kicks at least. I don't necessarily know if Tai Tuivasa can. Tybura throws kicks to the head with his left leg a lot. But he's definitely the better grappler of the two. Very good wrestler. This is a guy who went out there and out-wrestled and out-grappled Sergey Spivak. And Sergey Spivak took Tai Tuivasa down almost 7 times in their bout. So 7-8 times. So, I do think that the longer this fight goes, the more likelihood that Marcin Tybura takes over with his grappling. I think that he just really has to avoid the power of Tai Tuivasa, which is pretty difficult to do. I think that Marcin's pretty smart for the division, and maybe everybody's super low on him because he went out there and got finished in 1 minute and 13 seconds against Tom Aspinall. That's Tom Aspinall, though. This is a good athlete. He went out there and also beat Alexander Romanov. So I think that the more well-rounded fighter is Marcin Tybura. The people, and myself included, will be rooting for Tai Tuivasa to get a knockout and to do another shoey. But I think I'm going to slightly favor Marcin Tybura. I do think that if he changes levels, in which when fighters are closing the space on Tybura, he does change levels and rush them to the cage, and then he works his double underhooks, and he'll body lock, and he'll try to twist you to the ground or try to reap your leg and take you to the ground. And then he actually will shoot a double and connect his hands underneath your butt and take you to the down. He did it to Sergey Spivak, and Spivak's a hell of a grappler. And he's done it to plenty of people as well. So I think that Tybura does survive. Granted, it's heavyweight division, super volatile, so I'm going to smash exposure to both sides. I would recommend you doing the same. And the issue that I have with Tai Tuivasa, excellent leg kicks, but like against Spivak and against Volkov and against many people, I think it's like 5 times throughout the fight footage that I looked. When he throws leg kicks, he sometimes is so off balance. Like if they catch the leg kick or throw a strike at the same time, he's taken down as he throws leg kicks about 5 or 6 times on tape. So, I think if Tybura gets on top of him with his jiu-jitsu or his ground and pound, I think he's going to wear on Tai Tuivasa. So I'll slightly side with the underdog in Marcin Tybura, but I really don't have a strong stance one way or another. I'm just kind of desperate for an underdog also on this card. So give me Marcin Tybura to win, but I love the fight in general.
Yeah, to me, it is something that you have to prioritize just because of the way the fight could go either way. And, we always talk about on the show is, trying to give, wanting to give you, okay, this is how this guy can win, this is how that guy can win. Yeah. And, to me, the concerns I have about Tai Tuivasa is if he doesn't get a stoppage, say within 10 minutes, what is that cardio going to be like? The fact of this fight was delayed from February to here because of an injury situation, with Tai Tuivasa, is he stepping in this a little too quickly? Whatnot? He has said he is not stepping in too quickly. And how much for me is, will Tybura go the grappling route in this one? Will he try to engage in grappling very early on, as opposed to, getting into a slugfest, because we all know that's Tai Tuivasa's way to go out there and win. Look, and when you look at the props over here, Tuivasa win by TKO KO plus 100, plus 225 for Tybura. Submission, do not see Tai Tuivasa going out there and getting a submission at plus 2,000, plus 500 for Tybura. And then the decision prop, which I don't see this thing going 25 minutes. The decision props for Tai Tuivasa plus 1,200. Plus 650 for Marcin Tybura. I will say this: I will probably get to more Tai Tuivasa just because of the knockout upside within. Okay. Just because I have question marks on that chin, but I totally understand if you want to get Tybura just because of the potential grappling aspect of this matchup, and if say this fight does get into the third round.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Ty might actually be overlooking Tybura a little bit, right? Like because when you lose fights to some of the best in the division, it's pretty easy to say like Gane, Pavlovich, Volkov. Oh, those guys are all the best guys in the division. I'll beat the rest of the division. I think that Tybura is very skilled. Very skilled. It's his durability that's the only thing that's in question, in my opinion.
Yeah, so we'll see. But to me, in terms of GPPs, I think this is a fight that you have to circle and prioritize, especially because of what the salaries are in terms of this one. Next up, we got our co-main event. We got Bryan Battle taking on Ange Loosa. Loosa's a plus 155 betting underdog, minus 185 for Battle. Battle 8,600 and 7,600 on the other side, Pete.
Yeah, I love this fight. I love this fight from a viewing aspect. I think that this is an excellent test for Bryan Battle, and I think that Ange Loosa is consistently underrated within the division. This is a guy who puts together high volume, high pace, very very good wrestling as well. Some holes in his game that I do see is that he's quite hittable at times, and we did see Reese McKee start to have a little bit of a comeback in the third round. And I'm not the biggest Reese McKee guy. And I think that's also in part because Ange Loosa really went out there and just completely emptied the gas tank trying to finish him in round 1 and 2. Had him hurt multiple times. Also went to the wrestling well 6 of 10 times. This guy throws with tremendous volume, 213, 233, and 182 significant strikes thrown in 3 straight UFC fights. That's quite crazy. I think that his durability can be tested here against Bryan Battle. I think Bryan Battle is a very big guy for the division. I think that he hits really, really hard. I think that Bryan Battle is pretty well rounded. He can, attempt chokes. He can defend some takedowns. If you really look at the stats, it looks like Bryan Battle has horrific takedown defense, sitting there at 45%. But that's largely due to Renat Fakhretdinov. I mean, Fakhretdinov went out there and took him down 7 times. And, 7 of 9 times is really going to hurt your average, especially when a lot of your other fights are ending so quickly. So I do think that Bryan Battle has improved throughout his UFC tenure. And this is a guy that was significantly underappreciated and overlooked on The Ultimate Fighter. And he's kind of impressed me time and time again. I think that this guy, Bryan Battle, is very, very good. If you don't believe that he's made improvements in his wrestling, and in general, I think that Ange Loosa is one of the best in live underdogs on the card just because of the pace that he pushes. Mm-hmm. If you are not in good shape and you cannot go a hard 15 minutes, Ange Loosa is probably going to go out there and outwork you in one department or another. Now, do I think Ange Loosa goes out there and wants to stand and strike with Battle? I don't. I think he's going to be looking to shoot and shoot often. So it all comes down to the success of the takedowns. I think he's going to struggle at times, and he's going to get hurt at times, in my personal opinion. So I'm still going to be favoring Bryan Battle here, and the pace of Ange Loosa can actually boost the totals of Bryan Battle. And I think that Bryan Battle is going to go out there and put together a hell of a performance. We've also seen him throw with high volume, 193 significant strikes thrown in the Tresean Gore fight. We've seen him taken down time and time again. He can also get takedowns at his own right. But like over these past couple of years, man, I've seen like a switch in this kid. He's gotten so much better. So I'm going to side with Bryan Battle, but I will put an asterisk on this matchup, same way I do every week. Main event and co-main event. Get your exposure to Ange Loosa. I don't hate it if you're going to back him and you think that he can outwork Bryan Battle. I'm just on the opposite side. I think Bryan Battle is going to put a statement performance together on Saturday.
I agree with pretty much everything you had to say there. I think that from the betting perspective, if you're looking to maybe take a little bit of a shot on the underdog here, I would the decision prop for Loosa at plus 275, I think, is if you're looking to get a little plus money on a decision prop, that's the one that sits out there. And, look, I think it's, you look at the history of both these guys. I mean, of course, they've both got the wins over AJ Fletcher. Of course, that's the most recent win here for Bryan Battle. And when you look at the fight stats, the one thing that does stick out to you is the fact of, Loosa landing over 6 strikes per minute. So something to see there. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that if he's going to win this one, I think it's about utilizing that grappling, getting the matchup to the ground. And I do think that if he does get the win, it is going to be via decision. I think, but I do kind of look at that potential ceiling for Bryan Battle, maybe going out there and getting a finish. Maybe it's in the second, maybe it's in the third round. That's one that I do kind of look out there. Next up, we got a matchup in the 205-pound division. Kenny Nzechukwu taking on Ovince St. Preux. Kenny Nzechukwu is the biggest betting favorite on this card, is he minus 650 betting favorite, plus 450 for OSP. OSP 6,800 on DK, and for Nzechukwu, he is 9,400, Pete.
Oh, Lord. Can you imagine if the largest favorite on the card just goes out there and gets smoked against Ovince St. Preux? I mean, we've seen Ovince St. Preux knock out plenty of people within, his UFC tenure. I mean, granted, a lot of them are a long time ago. Cody Donovan, Ryan Jimmo, Mauricio Shogun Hua, Patrick Cummings, Corey Anderson, Alonzo Menafield is probably the biggest one that happened back in 2020, and Menafield really ran into a shot. And then we also have Kennedy Nzechukwu coming off of a knockout loss to Dustin Jacoby. He's also got knocked out against Da Un Jung in a weird spot, like when he got elbowed through his guard. So do I think Kennedy wins? Yeah, I think he wins. Do I love this spot as far as like a number, 9,400? Not necessarily. I feel like he kind of builds into fights a little bit. Not going to go out there and go bananas from the opening bell. Felipe Lins went out there and cooked Ovince St. Preux early. And what was it, like in under a minute or something like that, 49 seconds. So I think that you could clearly go out there and do the same thing to him. I just think Kennedy's smart and patient, and also coming off of just making sure that he's going to go out there and be smart against still a dangerous guy. Like Ovince St. Preux is going to still be dangerous in round one. That cardio drops off a cliff in round 2 and 3. So I'm probably going to be looking at the round 2 or round 3 Kennedy and Nzechukwu numbers. Kennedy should win this fight, man. It's 2024.
No, you're exactly right. He should win this matchup. I think that if you're Kenny Nzechukwu, I think obviously you want to stay away potentially going to the ground because we know what OSP can do on the ground. But I mean, look, one of the ways I would describe this fight card is we've seen the UFC has released 12 fighters over the last week or so. Yeah. And we know what is coming. Dana White's Contender Series is right around the corner. I think that this card is filled with fighters who are potentially, with a loss, will find their way. They will no longer be UFC fighters. And I think Ovince St. Preux is one of those. 40 years old, 4-7 in his last 11 fights. There's various fighters throughout this card that I think that if they don't get the win on Saturday, that is probably their last fight in the UFC, at least at this point in their career. There are some fighters that are on the final fight of their deal. We can talk about those fighters later on in the show, but like it's one of these things of like, I don't know what it is about Kennedy, but I've just never been able to trust him.
Oh yeah, totally untrustworthy, right? Like, I don't know. He's so long for the division. He's got all the tools. He's got a great coach behind him. We've seen him make boneheaded decisions. He's young though. Like, he's still maturing in the sport. He's clearly the more well-rounded in 2024. I think honestly, like, he could do whatever he wants in this fight. Yeah, once OSP gets tired, he could even out-wrestle OSP and sub him. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I think OSP is so far shot in 2024 that it really doesn't matter. But I think the round 2 and round 3 somewhat caps his upside for a 9,400 fighter.
And when you look at the betting side, not a lot of great props out there for Nzechukwu. Wins via TKO KO minus 225. The submission prop is a nice one if you want to take a sprinkle at plus 550. The decision prop is also plus 550 for Nzechukwu. On the OSP side of the equation, plus 1,200 to win via decision, plus 1,400 to win by submission. That to me is kind of an interesting one if maybe he tries to go off with the OSP Von Preux choke. And then, of course, plus 1,100 to win by TKO KO.
And the dumbest thing in the world. They hit 12 Von Preux chokes in the UFC because everybody holds on to a guillotine. It's like, dude, what the hell is going on? I mean, is that just a testament to the light heavyweight and heavyweight product out there? Like, these guys just holding guillotines for when their opponent has them inside control. It's like, dude, let go of it. What are you doing? Use your underhook.
Hey, John Anik with the line last week. Dustin Poirier goes, well, as I looked down my notes, I don't think he's ever won via guillotine choke.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
dude, that to me, like, you want to talk one of the funniest things in last week's card is Mike Brown going, stop going for guillotines. And what's he do like 20 seconds later? Goes for a guillotine.
I'll tell you, man, when I was at American Top Team, this is years ago. It's probably like 7 years ago, maybe even longer than that, right? Met Dustin, had mutual friends, and trained in the same room as him. Never got work with him. But even at that time, right, like I always said to my friends, and I probably mentioned it to you, like I watched him wrestle and I watched him grapple, and I was surprised that his grappling, his jiu-jitsu and everything, like he was doing a lot of great stuff. And he was a lot further along than I thought than what was shown on tape. And I criminally underestimated that going into last week. I really did. I almost kind of forgot about the 7-8 years. And then the number one thing that I didn't put two and two together, and I wish I did, Jason, is like Mateusz Gamrot training for a southpaw, which is Jafel dos Anjos. You have Dustin Poirier training for a southpaw, which is Benoit Saint Denis. Mateusz Gamrot and Dustin Poirier were main training partners for this camp to give each other great looks. And who pushes a high pace? Benoit Saint Denis and Mateusz Gamrot. You know what I mean? So it's like it kind of all makes sense, and that's that hindsight 2020. But that's just a mistake I made last week, and I think a lot of people are kind of just the new guy. It's tough coming off a knockout loss to really back a veteran in a situation like that. It was a ballsy move by Dustin Poirier, but I think it really elevated his stock for the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things like one of my major takeaways from last week's card is the fact of you've got to be well-rounded. You just can't. I mean, you look at Jailton Almeida, and as amazing as he was in that opening round with his grappling, you just saw on the feet like, man, there's got to be some improvements there, and I think we saw the same thing with Benoit Saint Denis, and I mean, look, and the biggest loser last week may be Justin Gaethje.
100%.
Because he has to be
loser in a week when my boy Max Holloway beats him too. So.
No, he has to be sitting there thinking, hold on, I got talked into taking this fight against Max Holloway.
Yep.
And no matter what happens in that fight, even if he goes out there and looks amazing, tools him, he's probably not getting the next lightweight title shot. And the fact, and he should be. It should be either him, Charles Oliveira, or Arman Tsarukyan if Tsarukyan goes out there and beats Charles Oliveira at UFC 300. But the timetable of all this, the fact of when you look at when Islam and his camp have talked about when they want to fight, that being in June, Dustin Poirier may be your next challenger for Islam Makhachev. And so if I'm Justin Gaethje, I'm sitting there going, damn, I just beat this guy.
Yeah. It's quite hilarious how just the MMA gods work and how the division just shuffles. It just, it all comes down to taking an opportunity and timing. You know what I mean? And to no fault of his own, Justin Gaethje doing what he should, highlighting UFC 300. But that's what happens when you have these stupid BMF belts when it should be like number one contenders match. You know what I mean? Like this, like the gimmick of the BMF belt is just to kind of build UFC 300 and kind of carry that legacy going forward, which is awesome from a viewing standpoint. But from a legitimate ranking and division standpoint, look what it just did. You just had somebody skip all the rankings, and Dustin Poirier deserves it more than anybody as far as what he's put into the sport. Yeah. But currently, he did just lose to Justin Gaethje. So it's Gaethje first.
Yeah, I would love to hear our listeners' perspective on this. So leave your answer in the comments here. Who's more likely to get a title shot next? Dustin Poirier. I'm going three different weight classes here. Belal Muhammad or Merab?
Oh! You're saying like
in those weight classes.
Yeah.
Is Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad next? I don't get the sense that the UFC really wants to go that route.
I think it's Poirier, bro. I think it's already booked. I mean, it was booked the day after. 2 tweets. The fight's booked.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, and look, as a combat sports fan consumer, and from a sporting aspect, I hope Belal Muhammad is the next title defense for Leon Edwards. I hope the next fight for Sean O'Malley is against Merab. Lightweight, it could be, who knows what happens. I mean, this is a crazy sport, and but yeah, I'm probably with you. I think Dustin Poirier likely is going to be that next guy. Let's move over to our next matchup. We got Isaac Dulgarian taking on Christian Rodriguez, minus 180 for Dulgarian, plus 150 for Christian Rodriguez. Rodriguez, 7,700 on DK, and for Dulgarian, he is 8,500 on DK.
Yeah, so really compelling matchup here, and I think that Christian Rodriguez is probably going to be one of the highest owned underdogs on the slate, or maybe the one of the most intriguing underdogs, right? Like we've seen C-Rod go out there in underdog spots in the past, picking up back-to-back victories over Raul Rosas Jr. and Cameron Simon, two pretty big prospects within the sport. Going out there and somewhat fraud checking Raul Rosas, who's just a grapple heavy, takedown heavy, reliant fighter, zero striking to his game. And Christian Rodriguez is well-rounded, goes out there, has better cardio, reverses some positions, defends 13 takedowns, gets himself a decision victory. Went out there impressively against Cameron Simon, was crisper than him, threw 161 significant strikes, landed 83, landed 3 takedowns in his own right, had some control time. He's well-rounded, right? Like Christian Rodriguez is well-rounded. I do think that he's a true bantamweight, though. His inability to make bantamweight consistently is kind of forcing his hand to go up to featherweight, though. And this is a guy who's missed weight so many damn times. It's really, really frustrating, especially from a competitor standpoint. It's like, dude, it's your job. Make weight. Like, make weight, or you should never even attempt it. Like, when you sign that contract, making weight's a priority. And I think that, getting fed to Isaac Dulgarian, in my opinion, who's a true featherweight from a very strong camp in Factory X. I think that we're going to see if Christian Rodriguez can hang with these 145ers. I think his best performance was clearly against Jonathan Pierce. But I'll also say that, like, I'm a believer in this Isaac Dulgarian kid. I think that he's so damn good. And coming from Factory X Muay Thai, he's training with the likes of multiple people. I mean, you got Jonathan Martinez, you have Yusuf Zalal, you got like that whole room of crazy talented fighters and UFC ready guys. I think that he's going to go out there and showcase his dominant wrestling, which is, I think he has a wrestling path to beat Christian Rodriguez. We've seen him get taken down and controlled numerous times. Dulgarian has very, very strong ground and pound as well. The only thing you could say about Dulgarian is, what about the unknowns? What about round 2? What about round 3? Never been to round 2 or 3 in his entire MMA career between amateur and pro. And the best thing that I heard is when I was listening to some interviews about Isaac Dulgarian. I'm like, I hope he mentions it. He's like, everybody thinks that I'm just a round 1 guy. I train consistently. I train so much. I have great cardio and blah, blah, blah. And he went on and he really expanded upon that point, saying, I want to make it a point to show everybody that I have cardio in round 2 and round 3 if need be. And I thought that was awesome. And it's just an unknown that we won't know until we see. Could he collapse under pressure if he's met with resistance? Absolutely. Do I think there's going to be a strength disparity between the two? I do. And I actually think that Isaac Dulgarian is going to go out there and get another victory here at 8,500. I have the matchup in general circled because of the unknowns, those could be labeled as red flags, and that could be an opening for Christian Rodriguez to come from behind and possibly win. But I think for at least a round and a half, if it lasts that long, Dulgarian's going to be in the driver's seat, and he's going to be winning the fight. So I think it's going to be a lot for Christian Rodriguez to come back and get a finish, or come back and try to steal the victory on the judges' scorecard. So give me Isaac Dulgarian to look dominant here at 8,500.
I do want to see what Christian Rodriguez looks like on the scale on Friday with this move up to 145 pounds. I mean, I do have some – you talk about unknowns, and like last week, Despain, and I still think there's a little bit going to be an unknown out there of,
Absolutely.
Because there were some things while the fight didn't last long, I was sitting there going,
what the hell fight was that, Jason?
Yeah.
Jason, if Jason's in the cage, Jason's not going to go out there and go blitz him and start swinging wild and get knocked out in 18 seconds. Like, what the hell was that?
It was one of those things where I was like, the UFC could potentially have something here in Despain. Yes, he is an older heavyweight, but I think it's one of those situations where they have to match him up correctly, because I think a more middle of the road UFC heavyweight that's polished, I think could give him some fits, especially with the grappling. I mean, the way he was throwing some of them punches, I was like, man, like, yeah, when they connect, that's awesome. But like, I also said, man, the UFC is going to have to be very smart in terms of how they go here. But like, to me, going back to Christian Rodriguez, it's just, my concern is in these grappling exchanges, where's he going to match up strength for strength against Dulgarian, a guy that is a 45er, where you have now a guy stepping up, and we'll see. But I really do like Isaac Dulgarian. I remember when he was coming up the regional scene in that Midwest scene. Of course, I want to say initially if he wasn't at Glory, he was at one of the gyms there in that KC area, and he was the guy I just kept getting talked about. I was like, this kid's legit. This kid's legit. He has everything there for you. And now, of course, with everything obviously that's happened there in the Midwest, goes out to Factory X, and it's a great room. You mentioned about Yusuf Zalal. He just got back into the UFC, getting a short notice fight. Sam, I appreciate you with the super chat there. Always appreciate the super chats when they do come in here. Of course, Sam, throw those questions in there, and we'll definitely get you there at the end of the show with your usual questions there. But to me, I like Dulgarian here, and to me, he is going to be a core play for me on DraftKings. So, well, I guess I just gave out one of my 6 fighters in the Fight HQ contest.
Boom. I tell you, it's tough. I give out all mine, and I just, it's, and then I try to get super cute in the contest. But yeah, like I think the room of Factory X is going to have them, like it's not, these guys aren't, when we train, we're not training one round. Like, so for somebody who's in a lower weight class, who's wrestled his whole life, I will trust a wrestler's work ethic so much to last 15 minutes. You know what I mean? So, I've been hearing a lot of great things about Isaac Dulgarian. I'd rather be early than late. So give me the upside at 8,500 for Dulgarian.
I'm with you there as well. Next up, we'll go over to a women's bantamweight matchup. You got Macy Chiasson, who's a minus 240 betting favorite, taking on Pannie Kianzad, who is a plus 195. She is 7,200 on DK, and of course, Macy Chiasson at 9,000.
Yeah, we've seen this fight. It was back in 2018. We had Macy Chiasson. She scored 102, got the second round submission. Was unable to take her down, though, back in 2018, which I find quite odd. 0 of 6 in the takedown department. Got a reversal. Actually, no, she didn't. She got a knockdown, attempted 2 submissions, had 5 minutes of control time. Largely, this fight, in my opinion, is probably going to play out against the cage. Macy's very, very physical for the division, and what she likes to do is she likes to close the distance and pin her opponents against the cage, get a lot of cage control, attempt some takedowns, try to incorporate her submission grappling or just control time, top time, and I think that she can do so. I think that Pannie Kianzad is an excellent boxer, throws at high volume, but like a fighter, in my opinion, that throws with such volume, I'm still like, I'm all right. Like, do some more. Like she's not going to go out there and she's not going to get offensive takedowns all that much. I mean, she's only attempted 2 max in any of her fights. Spends a lot of time defending takedowns and just boxing. I think the more well-rounded striker is clearly Macy Chiasson, who's going to mix in some kicks, some long-range attacks, and then if Pannie gets too aggressive, we'll see Macy we work for underhooks, pin her against the cage, attempt some takedowns. I think that actually, like, I think we could see a very good 1 round out of Pannie Kianzad, and then we'll see the physicality of Macy Chiasson kind of like go out there and impose her will over 15 minutes. I think it's going to go the distance. She did score 102 against Pannie Kianzad in the first encounter. In decision fights in the past, she went 3 of 8 in the takedown department against Shayna Young, scored 108. Split decision win over Norma Dumont. Granted, that's back in 2022. She went 6 of 12 in the takedown department, scored 106. So maybe Macy's a sneaky spend up. I mean, I don't love the fight from like a finishing aspect, but if she laces those wrestling shoes, maybe she gets multiple takedowns. The issue is, though, like I could see like 1 around just being enough. Like she's not going to get a tremendous number because I don't think that Pannie's going to be able to get out if she gets taken down.
And when you look at the tail of the tape here, one of the things that definitely sticks out to you is that 6-inch reach advantage that Macy Chiasson has in this one. Also, got to see what she looks like on the scale. We've seen the issues she's had getting to 35 throughout her UFC run. I mean, look, I understand why she is the favorite, and you bring up a great point in her first matchup, the fact that she was 0 for 6 in getting the fight to the ground here. And also, we haven't seen her almost a year and a half. You know, what's kind of going to be, what's she going to look like? You know, that's one of those, you know, we always talk about the unknowns in the fight game and what has been going on with that fire. So we'll see what happens there. Next up, we've got Gerald Meerschaert taking on Bryan Barberena. Gerald Meerschaert, A- 250 betting favorite, plus 205 for Bryan Barberena. Meerschaert is 9,100 on DK, and Barberena is 7,100, Pete.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I think that Barberena is clearly a welterweight. I mean, I don't like him at middleweight necessarily. His last middleweight appearance, he got taken down and completely out-grappled to Mahmoud Muradov, and Mahmoud Muradov was completely out-grappled by Gerald Meerschaert. I mean, we've seen Barberena go out there in wars, in back-and-forth striking exchanges, and just throw crazy volume and put awesome fighters away. I mean, he even put Robbie Lawler away, had a split decision over Matt Brown, Darian Weeks, you know, Anthony Ivy, but like, he's got some wins in there, and he's been finished via submission and also by knockout. Very volatile fighter, but a guy that will go out there and fight for your dollar. Meerschaert, more of a patient striker. We have actually seen his striking look good, and the best we saw his striking look was against Bruno Silva, which really blew my mind. I mean, he kind of just hurt Bruno Silva at times and avoided the crazy power. You know, I'm not an MMA math type of guy, and you shouldn't be in this game, but Bruno Silva wasn't able to get him out of there. I don't think that we're going to see Bryan Barberena get him out of there, and I think, you know, Meerschaert inevitably is going to shoot a takedown and get a submission over Bryan Barberena, who literally has horrible takedown defense and awful jiu-jitsu defense. So I think that Meerschaert's subs are some of the best in the division and some of the best in the UFC. His actual submission skills are incredible. You look at part of his record, the guy's got 20-something, almost 30-something submissions. So Meerschaert is so good at finding the neck, whether he finds it via guillotine, darce, anaconda, or rear naked choke. I think that he's going to find it one way or another. Sometimes he's just a little too patient for my liking. And that probably is like a round 2 or round 3 situation again. So, like, yeah. So, I mean, I like Meerschaert a lot here at 9,100. It's just like, I really like Thiago Moises a lot more. So, I mean, I'll get to Meerschaert, but I just think, like, it's kind of like a 1A, 1B between those guys.
Yeah, I mean, you love the finishing upside, and just like you, I don't love Bryan Barberena at 185 pounds. I think he's 170 here. He's one of the guys on this fight card that I expect with a loss that his time in the UFC will come to an end here. Oh, yeah. He's lost 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And he's talked about retirement in the past, you know, kind of, you know, and as I recall, I think the last time he basically brought it up as like, UFC offered me too much money, so I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, this is a guy that had a history of awful injuries as well. Tons of back injuries throughout his career, and remarkably came back and kind of had a little bit of resurgence. It's really tough to leave out on top, though. I'm telling you, everybody's like one more, and then you start to see the steady decline, you know, within their careers, and it's quite sad.
And very much, I mean, if you're Gerald Meerschaert, the thought process has to be get this fight to the ground, start to use your submission. And when I think of Gerald Meerschaert from a DFS player, he is a boom bust type guy. Either he's going to go out there and get you 90 plus points, or he's going to get you 20 and under. And you just hope, you know, this is, and I understand that. I understand why you're talking about more wanting to get to, say, a Thiago Moises, or maybe even more wanting to get to a guy we'll talk about here in a second, in Mike Davis. But, like, I do see that upside, and I could see where, you know, if you have 9,300 salary left and you have one fighter left, to me, I think all 3 of those guys are going to be good options. But I do love the potential upside. I mean, just the only thing I would be concerned with is if Barberena can weather a storm, is that score not what we would potentially hope in, say, Gerald Meerschaert goes out there and gets submission win, which, by the way, the submission prop, plus 110.
Yeah, dude, I'm hammering that. Like, what are we talking about? I mean, like, That's such a good prop. That's such a good line. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love parlaying props, but I could see my putting, if I was going to do a 3-leg prop on Saturday, of just saying, you know what, let me just take the plus 110. Meerschaert wins via submission.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Let's move over to our next matchup. We got Mike Davis taking on Natan Levy. Mike Davis, the second biggest betting favorite on this card, or excuse me, third biggest betting favorite. He's minus 415, plus 315 for Natan Levy. Levy is 7,000 on DK, and for Mike Davis, he's 9,200.
Yeah, I really love Mike Davis. Have loved Mike Davis for quite some time. This is a guy who, won a competition at Tiger Muay Thai to basically get in martial arts education over there and join the team. And then from that, we've seen just tremendous growth. I mean, like his Dana White Contender Series fight years and years and years ago against Sadiq Youssef is one of the best fights we've seen. And then in the UFC, we've also seen him just go out there against Gilbert Burns. Granted, it's Gilbert Burns, man. And then Thomas Gifford, one of the most, malicious beatings you will see. Mason Jones, who has been crushing it outside the UFC right now, and up until his UFC tenure was crushing it as well. It just kind of just didn't happen in the UFC. I think we'll see him back soon. Put together a great performance there, and Vyacheslav Borshev and Slava Claus went out there and just completely dominated him. If you have a weakness, my man Mike Davis is going to expose it. 9 of 11 in the takedown department. Went out there, had 8 minutes of control time. 122, 90, 134. His 3 performances in the UFC, his 3 victories in the UFC. I think that, you're going to see both guys. You're going to see Natan Levy look to grapple. 3 of 7, 9 of 16, and 6 of 10 in the takedown department. But you look at who he's doing that against. Rafa Garcia, he lost. Mike Breeden and Gennaro Valdez. I do not hold those 3 fighters in the same category that I hold Mike Davis in. I think Mike Davis can hurt Natan Levy on the feet. I've consistently picked against Natan Levy when I thought that his opponents could possibly come back. And even though he's getting takedowns, he's going to lose in the damage criteria part of the scoring because he just, outside of kicks, I hate his boxing. I hate his striking outside of his pretty kicks. He's got good kicks. Love his kicks. Mm-hmm. But I think that Mike Davis is going to butcher him on the feet. I really do. I'm really, really bullish on Mike Davis. Hopefully his defensive striking, his striking defense is on point so he doesn't get kicked in the head from a sneaking Natan Levy kick. But I think that Mike Davis should roll and that he should beat up Natan Levy over 15 minutes or get him out of there. So Mike Davis, I think, is a very strong 9,000 option at 9,200.
My general thought on this fight is this, B, and I'll get your thoughts. Where is Natan Levy better than Mike Davis?
Yeah, I really don't think so.
That's my issue in terms of if I wanted to take a shot on Natan Levy, it's just looking at the skill set of both guys, what they can do offensively, what they can do defensively, and I think Mike Davis checks all the boxes in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can have an off night, and maybe like Natan Levy can push a crazy pace, which maybe fatigues Mike Davis, mm-hmm. or it starts to make his skills seem a little bit more dangerous than they are when you're just so busy. When your opponent is so busy and you're constantly defending, it's tough to kind of win a round. So maybe that's his strategy in this situation. But I agree with you. I think that Mike Davis has him covered and that he's good chalk here at 9,200.
Next up, we got another female matchup. We got Nunes taking on Chandler. Chandler, a plus 115 betting underdog, minus 135 for Nunes. Nunes, 8,400 TK, 7,800 for Chandler. Every time I see the name Chelsea Chandler, I can just think about her fight where she was literally running.
Yeah. She turned and sprinted towards the door. And I don't think she knew where she was at that moment, other than I just got hurt and I'm going to run away. And, it's weird because when she gets her opponents from the regional scene, from Invicta to the UFC and Yulia Stoliarenko, when she gets her opponents down on the canvas, her ground and pound is vicious. She's a big girl. So, I do think that at bantamweight, granted, we'll have to see how she looks, she could really impose her will in this matchup against Josiane Nunes, who has looked poor on the mat with her grappling and her takedown defense. You saw it against Ramona Pascual on the feet. You saw Zara Farron start looking solid, and Zerafan's not a good fighter. As a minus 550 favorite, Josiane Nunes should not had let Zerafarin go in there and have really any moments. And granted, Farron was tough, took her shots on the feet. My issue with this fight is that it's just going to be, I don't know, it's so ugly. When I went back and I watched way too much Chelsea Chandler tape. She looks to pin her opponents against the cage. And like I watched a lot of her Invicta fights, and like she's really just happy just pinning her opponents against the cage and dirty boxing, and then like the round ends and then the round expires and then like the fight's over. So it's like perhaps this could limit the upside of this matchup. On the feet, I think Chelsea Chandler will throw recklessly and has some power in her own right, but her defensive striking is awful. Like she's so open. I think that big overhands and wild looping shots from Josiane Nunes will land. We just really got to hope that Josiane Nunes can stay on the feet, right? Like if you tell me Chelsea Chandler's ground game's amazing, I don't think it's amazing. I think it's probably better than Josiane Nunes, but I think that Nunes might be able to work back up to her feet or at least defend. The good news is when I saw Nunes get pinned to the cage in a couple of her bouts, which is something Chelsea Chandler is going to look to do, she did do the right thing. She did, pummeled to get underhooks in reverse positions and had good head position. Little subtle things that, like, as a coach, you see him like, okay, well, she may be improving upon a weakness, or at least she's doing the right thing. I'm still going to pick Josiane Nunes. I mean, there ain't no way I'm going to pick Chelsea Chandler to our viewers after she got cracked, humiliated me and went out there and turned and sprinted away from her opponent. Granted, it is Norma Dumont, who's an absolute killer. I think that Josiane Nunes can crack her and hurt her and kind of give her some PTSD from that fight as well. I guess what I'm going to do, Jason, this fight's probably optimal. I might just hope that it's exactly what I'm thinking. A lot of cage control from Chelsea Chandler, better moments from Josiane Nunes, damage versus control. Josiane Nunes wins a decision, not necessary for optimal. And I don't have to stress over the damn fight because I hate picking this fight. I don't even want to have it in my exposure lineups as somebody who actually watches it. If you don't watch the fights, set it and forget it, sure. But like, it's going to stress me the hell out. So I'm going to pick Josiane Nunes to win the bout, but I'm probably going to fade it just because I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, I am totally with you about potentially fading this one, just because of, it's one of those things. If I remember, watching that Chandler fight live, and I remember, I want to say I had a decent amount of her in that matchup too. And I was just like, what the hell did I do here? Like, who did I piss off?
Yeah. Yeah. But okay. And to her credit, when she got hit and she turned and she ran, it's not like from that moment forward, she was completely unchecked out of the fight, like checked out. So like, I was like, all right, I'm super critical of that moment. Granted, that's terrible. I don't like anybody running and turning their back. That's just very, very poor body language, especially for a referee. Referee could turn and step in and wave the fight off. Like you cannot do that.
Oh, yeah.
But like at least in rounds 2 and rounds 3, she tried to go out there and implement her game plan. And guess what it was? A lot of pinning her opponent to the cage and just wasn't good enough. And we got out muscled against Norma Dumont. So I'm picking Nunes to win a decision here.
Yeah, I'm going Nunes as well. Next up, we got Filho taking on Osbourne. Osbourne plus 145. Filho is minus 175. He's 8,700 DK. And for O'Day, he is 7,500.
Yeah, so I like this matchup. I think that Jafel Filho is actually a pretty strong option in the mid-range and upper tier of the 8,000 range, so 8,700. I think he has multiple ways to win here. I think that he hits pretty damn hard. We saw in the Contender Series that he goes out there and he hurt Robert Echeverria or whatever his name was, who's actually a pretty bright prospect heading into the fight. And he hurt him so many times on the feet. And then he follows up his strikes when he has people hurt with his great jiu-jitsu. So I think there's multiple ways for him to go out there and impose his will on Ode Osbourne, who's been pretty chinny at times, and his fight IQ is poor. I think on the outside, very explosive, very athletic, has aerial attacks, good flying knees, good moments. His best wins, though, are against very poor opposition. I mean, somehow he won against Charles Johnson. I don't know how the hell that happened, but I mean, 3 of 10 in the takedown department. The issue here is he's not going to be the better grappler, right? Like we know that Charles Johnson can be taken down. He improved upon that and is still improving on it. But the knockouts of Zaruk Adashev, Jerome Rivera, okay. Somehow he beat CJ Vergara too. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just criminally underrating Ode Osbourne, but I think this is an excellent spot for Jafel Filho here. I think that Daniel Barres is 2 times the fighter that Ode Osbourne is, and we saw Jafel Filho get hurt to the body numerous times in round 1, come back, land a shot, hurt him, take him down, and get a round 1 finish, round 1 submission over Daniel Barres, who I think is a pretty solid prospect in his own right. So give me Jafel Filho here at 8,700, inside the distance, but most likely via submission.
Yeah, and when I was looking over at Best Fight Odds, I did not see any props out on this one, so we'll have to pay attention to see where these props kind of go throughout this week. Ode is a guy that I've had some great conversations with over the past, and so he's one of those guys of you never want your personal feelings, to when it comes to your analysis, and understanding of like, man, like I'm rooting for this guy because I've had some dope conversations with him, but then I'm also like, but then you have to look at the fight film and you just gotta go, not the ideal matchup.
It's a tough part, right? Like, I mean, like, granted, we're not getting paid to do this stuff. I mean, it was great when we worked for a company. We're doing this just because we enjoy it, and hopefully it leads to a career for us, especially if you guys can share our content, like the videos, subscribe to the channel, all this and that. But like, it's tough putting personal relationships and previous like training and interviews that you have with friends just for a YouTube video out there. But I mean, like, we're this, in my opinion, we view it like a job, and we're being professional and calling it as it is. Like, those guys that sit up there on the desk, like Anthony Smith, super critical over Michael Venom Page, but I thought that he made some good points, and I think it makes you a great analyst when you can take that bias out of the equation and still be friendly about it. And sometimes people, like, fighters are sensitive, but the fighters that actually appreciate what you're saying, and as long as you're not disrespectful about it, you know what I mean? Like, that's when fighters will get really upset about it. If you can critique and you can support your claims, most fighters will probably want to get better and will use that constructive criticism to help them get better. But if you're out here just, shooting from the hip, saying disrespectful comments, you deserve to get slapped. You know what I mean? So like, that's the tough balance for us, is just putting the bias aside.
I remember having a conversation with an NFL player, and it stuck out to me the way he said this, because I think it can be related to any sport out there, whether it's NFL or it's the UFC, is where if you're being critical, but it's true, I can't be mad at you. He goes, now, if you're saying something that totally is not true, I'm going to be pissed off. But there is something, and I think the UFC has done the best they can to make sure they're not putting someone who's working the desk or is working the play-by-play that has a personal relationship with the fighter they're talking about. Don't put a situation where it's Daniel Cormier calling a fight that's full of AKA fighters, because we all know you're naturally going to be biased.
Yeah, it's tough.
And how many fighters who are in that scenario, they want to be honest with the viewer, but do they really want to be honest about someone they've trained with? And it's a tough thing to do. It's an extremely tough thing to do. And I think sometimes when you look at whether we're talking about MMA, baseball, basketball, football, whatever it may be, a color analyst is one of the hardest jobs, because you know what? You're going to say something that's going to piss somebody off, and it may be 1,000% true. I've seen it so many times.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So the guys that could go out there and put the bias aside, still show respect to them. You're just doing your job, but are you also trying to educate the viewers out there and also help the fighters too? Like, we go back there and we watch the fight film. Like, I have my fights when John McCarthy's sitting there and Mike Goldberg, they're commentating my fight, and they said a lot of positives, but they also said some things that I'm like, okay, like, I'm going to take that and ride with it and work on it for my next upcoming camps.
Yeah, I mean that's just one of those things that as I always say in the mixed martial arts industry, you better have thick skin because if you don't, it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah. Not at all. Not at all.
Stay off X. Stay off X.
I was just going to say it's tough enough on Twitter nowadays. You better hide from the socials.
Yes, very much so. Let's move over. Next up, we got Culibao taking on Silva. Culibao, a minus 180 favorite. Silva is plus 150. Silva is 7,400 on DK, and while Josh Culibao is 8,800. Pete.
Yeah, so this could be a situation, right, where like Culibao could be one of the best leverage spots on the slate, because I do predict that for the majority, the MMA market's probably going to like Danny Silva, and I like Danny Silva. But this is a situation where we do have a UFC veteran, 3-2-1 in the UFC, Joshua Culibao. This is a guy who's debuted against Jalen Turner, but outside of that, went the distance in a draw against Charles Jourdain, victory over Sha Yilan, victory over Seungwoo Choi, split decision. Meerschaert Bogdasarian in a weird scramble despite getting outworked in round one, lands in a good position and was very opportunistic with a rear naked choke and got a submission over Meerschaert Bogdasarian, who's a one-dimensional grappler. And then most recently losing a pretty dominant decision to Lerone Murphy. So what I will say is that I'm going to be backing Danny Silva here at 7,400. I was very impressed with his Dana White's Contender Series bout. I also went back and watched a lot of his regional tape. I just think he's a pace pusher, right? Like I love guys that fight at high paces, especially for DraftKings. I know that he can go hard 15 minutes. That's something I really hold a lot of value in. If a guy's going out there and getting a quick finish, well, I think that kind of almost, raises more flags than a guy that goes out there and fights through a hard 15 minutes. So I like Danny Silva here. I mean, his output in that fight was absolutely insane. I mean, he threw 317 significant strikes over 15 minutes, landed 2 of 3 takedowns. He was like the Terminator in there. I mean, per round, that's 93, 107, and 117 attempts. So, like, my Lord, that is such crazy output. I don't think that Culibao can really keep up with that type of output. Culibao could hurt Danny Silva and possibly get him out of there. I just don't see it happening, if I'm being honest. I think that Danny Silva is just going to go out there and walk him down and we'll build as the fight goes on. He'll probably lose round 1, and then I think round 2 and 3, you're going to see Danny Silva start to take over. And even in a loss, let's say he loses but it goes 15 minutes, I can actually see him going out there and putting together a high score because of high volume. Unless I'm just missing something, a part of his game in his regional tape, he's looking like a pretty live underdog and something where I'm going to be pretty heavily exposed to him. So I like Danny Silva here at 7,400. But like I mentioned before, maybe Culibao comes in as one of the best leverage spots on the slate because really hasn't had a crazy performance. Like even against Meerschaert Bogdasarian, 76. Seungwoo Choi, 75. Other than that, like 15, 58, 33, and 5. Nothing really that's making you jump out of your seat. So give me Danny Silva here to win a decision at 7,400.
And by the way, that decision prop plus 325 for Silva win by decision. For Josh Culibao, the decision prop is plus 145. So I think you can kind of, when you look at the props, you kind of sit there and say that the odds makers clearly believe that this thing likely is going to go 15 minutes. Next up, we got Thiago Moises taking on Mitch Ramirez, stepping up here on short notice to make his UFC debut. Mitch is plus 325. Thiago Moises, the second biggest betting favorite on this card at minus 425. He's 9,300 on DK. And for Mitch Ramirez, he's 6,900.
Yeah, I mean, regionally, Mitch Ramirez gets a lot of finishes, right? Hurts a lot of people, gets in better positions than him, can sub people. He's not subbing Thiago Moises. He's going to look to knock out Thiago Moises because I don't think that he's going to go be able to beat him over 15 minutes. So, like, does he have significant power? No. Is Thiago Moises some incredible striker? I don't think so. I think he's probably better than what he's shown on tape. He's so dominant in the grappling department that he doesn't have to. There's been fights out there where I looked at Thiago Moises' strike and I'm like, nice. And then there's also fights where I'm like, the hell is he doing? Like, get going. But yeah, I think that Mitch Ramirez is in a tough spot, right? Like debuting, on Dana White's Contender Series against Carlos Prates. Oh Lord, that was a mistake. Prates went out there and worked him, and got him out of there in the second round and really struggled with the range and the length. I think that Mitch can get takedowns on most people, but I don't think he's going to take down or want to take down Thiago Moises. This, in my opinion, is a massive, massive step up in competition. And it's just a very tough UFC debut, right? Like, we had a really tough slate a couple weeks ago, and it was like talking about fighters who could do well in a loss. And who was the guy that Ludovic Klein fought that kid on short notice, massive step up of competition, made it look like he didn't belong in there. And I can kind of see the same thing happening here with Thiago Moises. I love Thiago Moises. I really want to get overexposed to him here. We've seen him beat Kurt Hollabaugh, Christos Giagos, Melky Zael Costa, 113, 101, and 100 points in those fights. We've also seen him beat Bobby Green, Michael Johnson, Alexander Hernandez. You know what I mean? Like, outside of getting knocked out, I just don't see how he loses here. So give me Thiago Moises to do whatever he wants, pick up a huge, huge score, and working with the Fight Nerds new camp over the past it seems like it's been like a year now. But Fight Nerds, I think he's going to go out there and he has the potential to break the slate like Gamrot broke the slate last week.
And Mr. Mears is someone that I am very familiar with of, him coming up the regional scene. And this was really likely going to be his best opportunity to get into the UFC, was to take a short notice fight. He recently changed management teams. So his new management team got him in this opportunity. But yeah, I think this is a Thiago Moises fight to go out there and win. And I'll be interested to see what some of those props are in terms of this one, as when I was putting my spreadsheet together this morning. Props were not out on this fight. Next up, we got a female matchup. This is our 8,000 versus 8,200 fighter. Got Corey McKenna, who's at 8,200, taking on Amarim. She is at 8,000. She is a plus 115 betting underdog, while Corey McKenna is at minus 135, Pete.
Why do they keep doing it to me, man? It's so hard. The 8,200, 8,000 fight's so difficult, right? Like, I thought I was in the clear last week with Jailton Almeida. Nope. It's a pick'em. It's a very, very difficult fight. You can see paths to victory for both fighters. Corey McKenna, definitely the more well-rounded fighter of the two. Jacqueline Amarim, definitely the specialist of the two, the jiu-jitsu specialist, IBJJF world champion. So, like, you have an incredible grappler in Jacqueline Amarim out of American Top Team. She could go out there and land takedowns and possibly get in a very good position. And what I did like in her fight against Montserrat Ruiz was the incorporation of ground and pound. Like, as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, you need to incorporate ground and pound, because guess what it's going to do? It's going to open up your submission arsenal. Like, if you can make them make a mistake, just turn their back a little bit, it's going to open up a back take. It's going to open up them reaching out, which could lead to an arm bar and an arm triangle. It's just very smart when I see fighters do that, not when I see fighters just try to grapple. So I love the incorporation of the ground and pound. I do think that I'm going to side with Corey McKenna, though. We have seen that Amarim is a very strong round one fighter and has, an excellent ability to get the fight where she's best, but an inability to finish the fight from a submission aspect. We did see her put Sam Hughes in dangerous positions, and she was unable to finish the fight. Had 3 submission attempts, multiple rear naked chokes, fully locked in, unable to finish it. Montserrat Ruiz, 4 submission attempts, unable to finish it. I don't think she's going to sub. I don't think she's going to sub Corey McKenna. I just don't. We're talking about a fighter who's, been a prospect for quite some time, and a fighter who's, dealt with concussions throughout the majority of her career, but a fighter who's been sticking with Team Alpha Male for quite some time and training alongside Macy Barber as one of her main training partners. I like it, man. I like it a lot. You also seen, I know that she got some work with Angela Hill also. So, like, I actually think that Corey McKenna is probably better than her last showing, which was back in 2022 against Cheyenne Balismus. So I think she's going to sprawl and brawl or reverse her way out of some bad spots. And I actually think that she can put a pace on Jacqueline Amarim, especially because she's not ready there for 15 minutes. So I'm going to side with Corey McKenna. The better round one crazy scorer is clearly Jacqueline Amarim. Split your exposure with this fight is what I would recommend. but I really like this fight as far as a target versus the super volatile fight between Josiane, Nunes, and Chelsea Chandler. I just don't want any parts of that. Um, it's an argument was which one do you think could be optimal? I think this one might be the sneakier way to the optimal, whereas the other one's just way more volatile.
Yeah, Sam had mentioned it in the chat. He said, will this be a decisive fight to have the winner to flip the slate your way? We would just want to see kind of how ownership, goes as we lead into Saturday of going into that one. But I do favor McKenna just a tad here. And then our first matchup of the night, this is another matchup where I think we have a fighter that if he does not get the win, his time in the UFC is going to be up. And my understanding is it's actually the last fight on his UFC contract. That's Ange, who is a plus 140 betting underdog. He's 7,300 taking on the Sarah Longo product, and Charles Lampos, who's at 8,900 and a minus 170 betting favorite.
Yeah, I listened to some interviews from both fighters, and Sharon Lampos Gregorio, I think that he hits pretty damn hard for the division. I think that his defensive wrestling is pretty solid. Trains at a pretty good camp. You've got the, under the tutelage of Ray Longo and Weidman. So, I think that, we're going to see a very prepared Sharon Lampos Gregorio here. You have Chad Anheliger stepping up on short notice. He owns it. He owns an MMA academy now, so he's always training. He's always teaching, doing a lot of jiu-jitsu training in and out of the gi, sparring with the guys. He's prepared for the fight, even though it's short notice. I'm sure that he's prepared. I don't know, man. I just don't really love his skill set, if I'm being honest. His hands aren't in the proper spot, in my opinion. His hands don't really return to his chin all that much, and against a very dangerous power striker in Sharon Lampos Gregorio, then you can get hurt on the feet. And we've seen him get hurt on the feet numerous times. He got hurt, but kind of went through the adversity against Jesse Strader, but mainly in the Haley Alatang fight. I think that Chad Anheliger headbutted every single right hand that was thrown in that bout. I don't know. For a guy that trains jiu-jitsu so much, you shouldn't be getting submitted as much as you do. And you did see that when he went against Jose Johnson, he was able to get some takedowns, but Jose Johnson's takedown defense at times is just completely absent. I think that Charalampos Gregorio has better takedown defense, in my opinion. So I think he might struggle. His footwork, he dances on the outside, doesn't really commit to much, has power, and he has heart. So I don't want to count him out in this bout against Chad Anheliger. It is a UFC debut for Charalampos Gregorio, but should feel acclimated because of, similar situation as Dana White's Contender Series. I think that Charalampos Gregorio is going to win a decision here, but he has the power to actually knock out Chad Anheliger, which really, it hasn't been done in his career, but never say never. This could be a guy in his debut that really breaks onto the scene. Anheliger got stung multiple times by Haley Alatang's right hand and struggled with the range of Jose Johnson. So Sharon Lampos has knocked out a lot of people, but I think it's going to be a decisive leg kick, power strikes from Sharon Lampos. And Chad Anheliger didn't do a lot of good things when it came to defending leg kicks on tape. So give me Sharon Lampos Gregorio to win a decision. Initially, I kind of circled Chad Anheliger as an underdog. I wanted to get behind, but yeah, I'm just going to pass on that, man. I'm going to back the Longo and Weidman product and Gregorio.
I'm with you. I want to back him here in this spot as well. It's just a matter of, based on some of the other higher end options that I want to get to, whether or not I'll have salary left over, because I will tell you, as I was hand building a lineup this morning, it was very much of this man, the under 8,000. I'm like, I probably got to put two of these fighters in there. And that to me is going to be the very tough part about it. So let's get right into our straight up fight picks, not DFS related, just straight up. The main event, give me Tuivasa.
I'm rooting for Ty, but I'm going to pick Marcin.
I would go Battle. Nzechukwu. Dulgarian. Chiasson.
Yep, Chiasson for me.
Meerschaert. Davis. Nunes.
I want to skip that.
I'm Chalk City. I'm just going to tell you this right now. I am Chalk City here. Filho.
Yep, Filho.
Culibao, even though I don't mind getting Silva in GPPs.
Oh, for real? You're going Culibao, huh?
Yeah.
I'm going to go Danny Silva.
All right. I would go Moises.
Yeah, Thiago, Moises, big time.
McKenna. And Charalampos.
Gregorio. Yes, sir.
All right. All right, let's get into so we get over to Discord. Tristan best leverage play. I haven't had a chance to see what ownership looks like yet. So once we get those ownership numbers, I'll have a better idea here. Best takedown upside.
Takedown upside. I would say Meerschaert 1, Tybura 2, Chiasson 3. I'm sorry. Thiago Moises goes over all those, but those are the four fighters that I would say.
Rank the 9K options here. So this week we've got Nzechukwu at 9,400, Chiasson 9,000, Meerschaert 9,100, Davis 9,200, Thiago Moises at 93. I would imagine Thiago is your number one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Thiago number one. I really like him. I'm going to say Davis, too, just because I do think that he can push a pace and possibly put a crazy score up. Meerschaert 3, Chiasson 4, Nzechukwu 5. And, it's just the untrustworthiness about Nzechukwu. Do I think he wins? Yes. But my rankings also, they deal with, upside. And I just don't necessarily know if he's going to have crazy round one upside.
Value plays under 8K on DraftKings, man. There's not a lot to love there. I mean, I think Tybura, but he's going to be a very popular play. I think no matter what kind of contest that you're playing in. I think the other ones that I would look at as that underneath 8,000, Danny Silva. I mean, it's just the problem is like some of these 7,000 options. I just look at them and I see so many paths how they don't win the fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tybura for me. Danny Silva also for me. Could very well be Chelsea Chandler just being the stronger fighter who lands in top position over Josiane Nunes, who was taken down by Ramona Pascual multiple times and looked like a fish out of water, didn't do the correct fundamental things. But, man, I don't know. Like, I'll have some with Chelsea Chandler, but I am not going to back her and, like, say I'm going to get to her a crazy amount. It's just – She really lost a lot of faith. I lost a lot of faith in her with her last performance.
In terms of cores on DraftKings, for me, it's Isaac Dulgarian, Tuivasa, and Mike Davis.
Okay, it's going to be Isaac Dulgarian for me, Thiago Moises for me, and then main event. That's just how I'll say it.
We just kind of just talked. The next question was favorite core plays. Kind of gives you an idea. I will say this also. I think Macy Chiasson, I think, is an interesting. I think it just depends on how you want to construct your roster. To me, if I'm hand building a lineup and I'm starting it with Dulgarian and either Tuivasa or Tybura, I've really opened things up to get to a lot of the fighters that I truly do want to get to. Favorite inside the distance fights and fighters. Well, the main event clearly is a favorite inside the distance fight. I would expect that. I'd be relatively surprised if OSP and Nzechukwu went 15 minutes.
Yep.
Meerschaert Barberena, I think, is another great inside the distance type fight there. And I look at someone like a Thiago Moises, and why do I see like late second, early third round victory?
I think he's going to do whatever the hell he wants in that fight. I think he'll knock him out, take him down. Sometimes my flag plants are so off, but I don't think this one's off.
Yeah.
I really like him here. I think he's going to get a submission finish. A very dominant one. I think Meerschaert gets a submission finish. I think Jafel Filho gets either a knockout or a submission finish. So those are three crazy props that I really like. If you just want to be safe, you can just do I don't recommend it, but you could just do inside the distance for all three. I wonder what that is. I don't have the line sitting in front of me, but I'm sure that's kind of juicy.
Exactly. Live dogs. I mean, and I think we've kind of mentioned, he's not really a big underdog. Tybura at minus 105, and I will say this, I think from a betting perspective, Tybura, I think you just wait. You just wait and wait on Saturday and just see where that number goes. I just think you're going to get a better number if you want to go Tybura. We've mentioned about Danny Silva. Of course, right now that's a plus 150 number. If I was going to throw anyone else out there,
Amarim's got great upside. She really does. She has, if she can get a takedown, work a submission in a good spot, I'm just gonna like the more well-rounded fighter in McKenna. But like at 8,000, like that's the price you need. That and down.
How about Loosa? You can go out there, maybe get a decision victory in an underdog role. I think that's a live dog out there. Top punt plays. Oof, it is not a great punt play week here. Even though I don't like either of these fighters to win, one fighter, I don't like the fact that he's fighting at 85 as opposed to 70. Bryan Barberena is just as a punt play, lands something crazy. We've seen him go out there and score some brutal knockouts. And then I would say total punt play, to me, it's a boom bust. Don't like the fact that he's 40 years old. Yep. Everything going on in his career, Ovince St. Preux.
Totally agree. I'm out on OSP, but I get it. He's worth a couple lineups. But I think the Bryan Barberena, criminally underrated as far as like just gameness, but like grappling skills and submission skills, non-existent.
Best fights with a decision odds. So there was a lot of fights that when I was looking over best fight odds that there just wasn't a lot of props out on the fights. Obviously, if you look at the books, they're thinking the co-main event is going to go to a decision. They also think Macy Chiasson, Pannie Kianzad goes to a decision as well. And then, Josh Culibao doesn't have great odds win via decision, but there's it's just one of those things we want to see kind of where the props go as the week goes on.
100%. Totally agree.
Best parlays. To me, if I'm building a 3-fighter parlay, I would look at Dulgarian. I haven't seen what the under 2.5 is on Tuivasa and Tybura. That might be the safer way to go in terms of the main event, just because of the volatility in that one. And then if I was going to add a third one, I probably would put Macy Chiasson in there, either her or Mike Davis.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be chalk for me. I like Moises. I like Davis. I like Jafel, Filho. That's kind of like 3 spots that I like. Outside of that, like there are some unknowns and other matchups, but those are three fighters in a parlay. Tons of juice, but I mean, it's okay sometimes.
And his road to the Manchester Series, over under on stoppages 6.5.
That's a good number.
We got 13 fights. Yeah, I think it's a very good number. I think it's probably. It's in that 5 to 7 range, I think. I'll go over, and maybe that's just hoping the fact that because I'm going to watch these majority of these fights after the fact, that I'm not having to sit back and watch a bunch of decisions.
Yeah, I'm going to say less. I'm going to say less, but I think it's a very good number. He's right on it.
Yeah, and of course, we appreciate everyone who tunes in each and every week for the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, be sure to leave a comment below. Who are the underdogs that you're going to be trying to slam in your lineups, whether it's in multi-entries, maybe you're just a single entry player, maybe you're just a cash player. We want to hear from you. Who are these underdogs this week that you like? Is there something that maybe you agree or disagree with what me and Petey have to say here? Leave those right there in the comments. Of course, we have our Discord channel, totally free to join. Great conversations going on in there. Of course, we have our DraftKings contest, which maybe Pete will sign up for this week.
I better, dude. I'm gonna do it now. I'm out sick again this whole week, so like I'm gonna do it now so I don't forget. Because I literally, as soon as lock happened, I'm like, oh, I gotta get in our contest. I'm like, shit, and I totally forgot again. So I got a lot of catching up to do. And thank you guys so much for the support within the Discord, community, with the YouTube chat and the YouTube community, subscribing to the channel, liking the channel. Liking the videos. We could try to get 150 likes like last week. I know that was a pay-per-view. Tremendous engagement with the audience. We really liked it. But yeah, we want to hear from you. Let us know you're 2 underdogs or you're a couple underdogs, whatever you're backing this week, and let's make some money.
And of course, we'll be back here next week as we've got another fight card, which I'm 99% sure is a Apex card. Going to be headlined by Rose Namajunas and Amanda Lemos. If my memory is correct, I'm pretty sure because I was putting together the schedule for the bar the last night.
Boss, isn't it?
Yes, it's Hebos and Rose Namajunas is the main event. If this fight card is right on the ESPN website, Peyton Talbot versus Cameron Saman is the co-main event.
Get the hell out of here. Do fighters get paid? Hey, do fighters get paid for co-main event spots or just main event spots?
If it's a 25, if it's a schedule for 5 rounds, there's additional money they get paid.
Yeah. So no, that sucks. And what the hell? Like that is What are we doing?
It's a 14 fight card next week, by the way.
How the hell is that the second best fight? Granted, it's two great prospects that I love and I want to watch them. That's the co-main event? What are we doing?
As my guy Daniel said on my podcast last week, Apex Cards, it is literally the developmental league of the UFC.
I got no problem betting on it and doing DFS about it, but goodness gracious.
I'll throw a little stat out here to kind of end the show. I know how much you love Nate Maness.
He's not back next week, is he?
Nate Maness does not have a scheduled fight coming up, but you realize Nate Maness holds a little bit of a UFC record.
What is that record?
He has had 6 fights in the UFC. He's never fought in front of a crowd.
Damn.
So this was, I saw this on the MMA Red the other day. It was fighters who've never competed in front of a crowd, whether they're fighting in Apex or back in COVID, all that. So yeah, Nate Maness has 6. Joe Anderson Brito has had 5 UFC fights. Now he does have a fight coming up here at UFC 301. Nicholas Motos had 5 UFC fights without a crowd. A bunch of fighters who are at 3 there. Evan Elder, Daniel Argueda's had 4 UFC fights, never fight in front of a crowd. My first thought was the person who put this together, man, you got a lot of time.
Yeah, you got a lot of damn time, bro. I'll tell you what, though, is some fighters might actually do better without a crowd because nervousness, there's going to be nervousness a lot. Dealing with the anxiety of having crazy amounts of people and the energy of a crowd can either, help you or hurt you sometimes. Sometimes people get stage fright. They go out there oh my God, there's so many people. I'm that's something that you just don't know. It's going on within fighters' minds. But as a fighter that's experienced kind of having nobody in crowds at times and then having a lot of people in crowds at times, there's a difference. And some fighters deal with it well and some don't.
Yeah, no, it is. I've had conversations with fighters who have fired from the Apex, and I think the majority of them say you get used to it, but the first time they say it's odd because, you think about if you're just fighting on the regional scene, usually regional scene crowds are pretty rowdy. I mean, sometimes there's really good entertainment in the crowd
100%.
With the commentary.
And it's like amateur wrestling. You know what I mean? There's chaos throughout the crowds and everything. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with these Apex cards, but next week sounds like a terrible one. I haven't looked at it, so.
Yeah. I mean, there is, all you have to do is look at fight cards. Whether they're in front of fans or they're not. But as always, we appreciate everyone tuning into this episode of the podcast. Of course, we'll be back here next week to break that fight card down for you. Of course, be sure to hop into the Score channel, have great conversations, and be sure to leave a comment below. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. Let's get over 100 likes on this video. And as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast.